Sure. So I'm NPC. That's my gamer tag. It's what everybody calls me in the Dota scene. I'm the manager for the cut, so I take care of a lot of the background logistical work that goes into keeping the team running from day to day. In my personal life, I'm a student. I'm majoring in history, and one day I hope to teach history. No, no, my real name is Thomas Sanchez. Marist. It is. It's in New York in the U.S. It's about 2 hours north of New York City. Yeah, I'm a junior right now. Yeah, well, this is my job, managing this team. It's not great money or anything, but it's a lot of fun. Sure. So I've been playing Dota 2 for a long time. I started playing back in 2012. Um, the first tournament I ever watched was the third international, and with Alliance Navi Grand Final, which in my opinion is still the best Grand Final, outside of maybe TI8. But so I used to watch all the internationals. I watched the majors. I tried to get into the professional scene a bit as a player back in like 2017, 2018, but then kind of school took priority, so I Dota took a backseat, and then I got asked to be a manager, and I decided what the hell, and I took it. Support. Yeah, support. I hate myself. I play support. Well, sure, everybody plays every role at some point, but my best role was always my position four. Especially when it transitioned from a jungler into a roamer. That's really when the role picked up for me. Well, it depends. Probably my best hero right now is probably Necrophos. Necrophos took me to 6K a few years ago, and so I haven't actually played ranked in quite a while, so I'll see if he can take me back there. Well, sure, that's my best hero, right? But like, I'm also a big fan of, Zeus, Lena, Underlord. Different heroes for different roles, of course, but yeah, I'd say I have a pretty large hero pool to work from. The highest MMR I ever got was around like maybe like 6.3. So I was like maybe like Immortal 2000 or something. Like it's nothing compared to the pro players, but for somebody more casual, that's nothing to scoff at. Yeah, I'd probably, if I had to pick like one person, it'd probably be No Tail. I don't know how familiar you are with the Dota scene, but he used to play carry back in the day. When OG was first created, he played position one. But in 2018, after Flying S4 left, he didn't give up. He didn't like just quit. He just did what needed to be done. His team needed a pause five, so now he's a pause five player. It's that like flexibility and that like willingness. Just like it doesn't matter. Like I'll do what it takes as long as I win. Like I have a lot of respect for him. Yawar, he's playing on Quincy Crew right now. Back in 2018, he wasn't nearly as well known, but so he was playing open qualifiers. They weren't Quincy Crew back then. I forget. They got picked up by Newbie, but I forget what they originally called themselves. Maybe, I think so. And it was UR, it was Quinn, MSS, SVG, and Snaking. And I remember because I played up against them in open qualifiers, and they smoked us in like 30 minutes, and I remember sitting there thinking like, these guys are gonna make it to TI, like they're gonna do well, and like they made it like what, like top 8, top 6. Yeah, I guess. Hey, I got stomped by Quincy Crow. I mean, I only really dipped my toes, so to speak, into professional Dota, right? Like I played a couple open qualifiers, and it wasn't like anything super serious. I just got some friends together and we just said, you know what? Let's see what happens. So, most of my experience is what most Dota players experience, just the pub scene. I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually think they've gotten way better. Back in the day, before preferred language, before, ranked roles, like there were just so many games where just like somebody wouldn't get mid and so they would just run down mid. There were so many games where you would just queue in and you just couldn't communicate with your teammates because you didn't understand each other. And overall, the skill has definitely increased. 5K now is like, would have been maybe like, like 7K. Like what used to be 5K is now like 7K. Like there's like this MMR inflation that people used to talk about, which is when Valve started implementing the resets. But even with that like with people hitting like 10K, 11K MMR, there's definitely still been a progression where it's like 1K players now would absolutely smoke 1K players like 5 years ago, like for sure. But as for North America as a region, it's interesting, right? Like people tend to think of North America as a weaker region for sure, but TSM just went ahead and got like second place at the last major. Granted, EG got last, but I think I think we're a very volatile region. You know, like when we perform well, we perform well, but the rest of the time, when we underperform, we've had a couple of we've had a couple of disappointing performances, to say the least. Honestly, the biggest thing isn't skill, it's stability, right? Let's say you play for Evil Geniuses. You have a team house somewhere where, you have a whole infrastructure that's taking care of, where you sleep, what you eat, transportation, they deal with everything. So you just have to worry about Dota and nothing else. But let's say you play for like the Cut, for example. It's a manager and 5 guys, you know? Everybody is, just living at home, they're students, they're working, and they try to make as much time as possible for the game. And my job is to make sure they can focus on the game as much as possible, but there are still limits to that. And the biggest thing, right, is you'll notice at the end of seasons, like the higher echelon teams, let's say, like your TSMs, your Quincy Crews, your Evil Geniuses, you'll see a lot less volatility in terms of rosters, right? They perform well, the roster stays the same, you know, whereas, you look at Division 2, for example, and you'll have entire rosters that are flipped like overnight, people just adding and dropping players, people making whole new teams. It's a lot more chaotic, and what that means is that, if you're making a new team every 3 months, it means every 3 months you have to start from scratch, because a big part of Dota isn't just individual skill, it's team communication. It's how well you play with other people. It's a team game. So every time you change rosters, you now have to update your playstyle. You now have to learn how this new player thinks, how they act, and vice versa. And so a big part of why you'll see teams like TSM, Quincy Crow, they'll consistently outperform. Part of it's experience, right? You know, how many majors they've been to, how many internationals, how many lands they've been to in general, how long these players have been playing at this level. Whereas, a team that comes up from Division 2, let's say like 5 Rad or Alpha, They have good players. In scrims, they can take games off teams like Nouns, TSM even, but you, put them in this, DPC format, and, Dota players are kind of weird. If they win, it's because in their minds it's expected. Of course, we're supposed to win. We're really good. If they lose, though, it's very easy for them to start looking inward and not necessarily just at their own mistakes, but at their team's mistakes. They start thinking more about like, can we get a better player versus can we fix these problems per se?
I guess
And
that.
that's not necessarily. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead, go
That's
ahead.
not necess- That's not necessarily always the worst impulse. Like take Quincy Crew, right? They make a couple of roster swaps. Now they're going to the major. EG, makes a single roster swap. They're going to the major again. Sometimes those changes are needed. Sometimes change is good, but at the same time, it's just that difference in stability is the real thing. It's the real difference maker between the tier one teams and the tier two teams.
I guess those aspects make sense whenever we do see like many roster shuffles, as it usually happens in amateur teams, what with many teams, reloading for like the next tour or the next season, or up ahead of like particular tournaments or, in person or online lands. We've seen many adjustments made by those teams, and it can kind of like renew the need to get familiar with themselves for a team. Have teammates catch up to speed and form their own play style, basically from scratch. And yeah, from that aspect, I do understand what you're trying to convey. That's very true. I'd now like to like talk about you being actually the manager of the cut, and how how did this position come to be for you? Were you approached? Did they approach you? Uh, could you give us or give me a
Yeah.
rundown of like how it went down?
So I've been friends with B God for a very long time. Like I've known him since he was 13, so it's been what, 6 years? We met in like a 3K pub one day, and we've been like, we've been pretty close. And so he messaged me one day like, "Hey, we need a new manager. Do you want to do it?" And so, I had nothing better to do, and I wanted to help him out, so I said sure. So he introduced me to SMD, and the rest is history.
So I guess just for the record, is this like your first actual management position? In any like pro Dota team?
Yeah,
And
it's been a roller coaster for sure. It's been a lot of learning.
and so, what was your expectations as in being a manager of the cut? What were your expectations, and how did that play out in reality?
Well, they SMD especially did a very good job of laying out clearly what to expect. Like here are the things that you take care of. Like here are your duties. You know, like he owns the slot, so there are some things that I can't do because I don't have the credentials, let's say, but a lot of the back end communication stuff, like I can just talk about everything I do for the team if you want, but
Sure, go ahead.
so like my main thing is I'm like their scheduler. So for example, every week, here are the days you're playing, here are the days you're not, and not just like tournament dates, but also scrims, right? Like a big part of Dota, like professional Dota, that not many people see is the scrims. You'll hear about them occasionally in broadcasts, oh, this team's scrimming a lot, this team's not scrimming a lot. And, it's basically you'll have like you're basically in constant communication with about 20 to 30 people. All the other managers, or like if a team doesn't have a manager, their captain or whatever, communicating with them, seeing like, hey, when are you guys free? We're free these days. All right, do you want to scrim at this time? All right, sure. And then you try and build the schedule for the week for them, and so they know ahead of time, like, I need to section off this time period for practice. That's the biggest thing I do. Like the next biggest thing is probably that I talk to all the administration for them.
Mhm.
So all the tournament organizers, and everything like that, you know. So, for example, for the Arlington Major, at the start of the season, because there was the potential that we could qualify for the major, they started communicating with me about visas. So I had to start, working with like the players who were not American to, make sure they had visas and that they were up to date and that they had like everything was good in case they had to go to the major. And I also do some side stuff too. So like, all like the Twitter account, for example, like I handle the social media. It's just the Twitter.
Mhm.
So, all those incredibly well done and definitely not done in Photoshop tweet graphics. I make all of those. You know, I'm not making them from scratch. I'm getting like wallpapers that Valve has released,
Mhm.
but you know, I put a little work into it, and then I just try to help out where I can. So like the store, for example, we just released a merch store
Mhm. Whi-
that
which by the way
oh,
is actually fire jerseys. Like I actually
oh
like the.
thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of that was a back and forth between me and SMD, just trying to figure out like what we wanted and like what looked good. And so he got the final say, but I was the one who communicated with Sector 6, the producers to get everything going.
Mhm.
So that's been a couple of months, and now that's done. So yeah, buy our merch.
Of course, man. Uh, and so I guess you had to like learn a lot of things, basically from scratch as a manager. And so, did you inquire to other managers within the scene about like receiving help? Just trying to understand, how a manager usually does their work.
Yeah, I got a lot of help at the start from Kami, who manages Coritiba now.
Hmm.
It used to be King of Kings, but they dropped their roster. Because there's a couple of ways. There's some websites set up to like organize scrims and whatnot. There's some discords, so they got me into those discords. They helped me get situated properly. They were a huge help at the start. But for the most part, it's I've just been figuring out stuff on my own. There's some etiquette stuff that you kind of pick up on as and you just try and copy what other people are doing,
Hmm.
you know. But for the most part, the past few months, I've just been winging it.
And so I guess at this point in time, since you've joined the team, do you feel as if like you've been managing to stay afloat, or you've caught on to the general know-how in being a manager?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming at times, but I think I've gotten the hang of it.
Mhm.
It's you know it's not the most glamorous job in the world, but no, I do care about these guys and I want to see them succeed.
And as you've been working as a manager on top of working or studying as a student in college, I find that sometimes when people are have like these many areas to cover, as either a player or a student or a worker, they'd have to like adapt themselves to make sure that they're doing well in both departments. If you understand what I'm saying. And
Sure.
and so for you, have you found some sort of instances that had you or required you to like use the skills you've learned from like class or studying for your work in Dota?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some cross skill use. I have both my parents are engineers, so they're both very logistically minded. So I have an entire childhood of, planning expertise to draw from, which is very helpful. But you know, yeah, it's not exactly one to one. It's definitely there's definitely some overlap just in terms of organization and coordination, but study habits are a tad different from learning how to send professional emails.
On top of that, you have to like build a rapport with the rest of the team. Its players, SMD. Also, you mentioned besides knowing BGOD and the rest of the teammates. And so, how have you dealt with the many dynamics of the squad? I.e., personality, their traits. How they compose themselves within the game and outside of the game too. As the manager.
I mean, all of these guys, right? Every professional player, right, understands that you know they're here to win. So regardless of how they might feel about anybody, there's this understanding intrinsically that like I'm not chatting them up on a regular basis. I'm here because I need to know your availability so I can make a schedule. And so when I'm talking to you, it's because this is a team related thing. And that's not exactly what it's like with everyone. It's not entirely just pure business. Like with B God, it's a lot more casual. That's putting it mildly. So a lot of back and forth stuff. He'll talk to me about his concerns. I'll talk to him about mine. We support each other. And with the rest of the team, with new players, it's kind of hard because you're trying to get a sense of them. But it's also you have to talk to them a lot because you have to find out like, hey, do you have a passport? What's your availability this week? Like, yeah, they're all good. Yeah, they're good guys. You know, SMD especially. He has he has very high standards. And sometimes that can be get a bit grating, but I respect it. Like he knows what he wants and he does not accept subpar work. If you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it right and you're gonna nail it. And like sure we got relegated, but you know we performed we didn't perform we performed pretty well in Division 1.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think I mentioned this before, but when exactly did you join the team?
Sometime in mid-March, I want to say. I don't remember the exact date.
Okay, okay. So how have you seen the general progression of this team, competitively speaking, um, since being promoted to Division 1 from Division 2, and also up till now, up till this current point.
Sure. Well, I actually joined right before the spring tour, so they were already in Division 1
Mm-hmm.
technically. But right, so I've been here through two squads, right? The original squad that I was here for was SMD, Kits, Ade, B God, Overlom. And the team we ended the season 2-5. It's like you know we stay in Division 1. We took a game off of Evil Geniuses. If I had to say, like, I think our biggest problem was just flexibility. We were running more or less the same draft every game. And so early on, when teams were still figuring us out, that was fine. But towards the end of the tour, we put ourselves in a situation where every game, you know, it was like Sand King Mars bands because Ade had played, I think at that point, 4 heroes the entire tour.
Mm-hmm.
And, Ade, great guy, you know? Overlom, same thing, very laid back, very easy to work with, Kits, incredible mid, but ultimately the roster changes aren't up to me, right? It's up to, the team. And the team decided that, things needed to change. And so we got High Shaggy, we got Jubei, we got Ryjix. And, we got relegated, but I actually do think the team overall performed better. You know? Shaggy is arguably the best mechanical mid in NA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's beat Abed in lane. He's incredibly good at dominating his lane, especially if you give him a hero like Necra or Puck. He rarely loses the lane, you know? And, Jubei, part of what we were looking for in new players was a drafter because drafting had been more of a communal thing in the spring tour, but we wanted more of a dedicated, strategist, somebody who could, draft around our strengths as a team. And, Jubei was the obvious pick. He's very close with Shaggy. He knows everybody on the team. He's played with SMT before. He's played with BGod before. And, I think our drafting improved significantly between the tours. And, Ryjix was... We were looking for an offlaner because North America, famously, not many offlane players. And so SMD told BGod, just whoever you want, we'll try and get them. And so he said, I want Ryjix. And so we got Ryjix. And, we ultimately ended up getting relegated, but, I definitely think we're going to be back there by the next tour, like by the end of the next tour.
But before the next tour, you guys have to play the TI 11 qualifiers. All of the teams Division 1, Division 2 will face off, minus those who have already qualified directly, for a chance to appear in the last chance qualifiers within a new format that Valve instituted for this year's edition of the tournament. And so, I just like to know, like, what is the team's general, like, mental level? What is the state of the team right now ahead of the qualifying? Like, is there confidence, stuff like that?
We're already getting ready for it. We're planning on, we're playing in some tournaments right now, but we are 100% focused on those qualifiers. At the rate things are going, TSM's already qualified. Evil Geniuses and Quincy are likely already going to qualify as well. So if all 3 of them get invited to the international, that means the NA qualifiers, we're going to be facing up against Nouns, we're going to be facing up against Wildcard, we're going to be facing up against 5-Rat. If we can beat those 3 teams, we're in the international. And, to some that may seem daunting, but for this team, that's very doable. So, we're already prepping for that.
What about the rest of Division 2? Like, for example, Alpha, if I remember correctly, they went undefeated in the regular season. And so, do you feel as if the team views like any contenders or rivals within Division 2 from this past tour?
You have to keep in mind that when we went up to Division 1, we were also undefeated in that tour. So, it's tough to say. North America is kind of in this interesting position because our Division 2, has a lot of great players, but overall as a teams, they're not nearly as strong as, let's say, Western Europe. So it puts things in an interesting situation where you have these like 5 teams or so that have like consistently stayed in Division 1, and you almost have this rotating cast of Division 2 teams that'll go up, get relegated, and then another 2 teams will go up and then they'll get relegated. So You know, Alpha's a good team. You know, I'm friends with Pingo, so I'm a bit biased. But I think when push comes to shove, I stand by my team. I think we can beat them.
You already mentioned the main contenders that you guys have been looking forward to face in this qualifiers. But for you specifically, what is one team that you like are most looking forward to face in qualifying?
Ooh. Well, I mean, all of this has just been my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak to what the team's thinking in terms of who's going to be the biggest,
Mm-hmm.
obstacle, the biggest threat, however you want to call it. Uh, Nounge is always a fun team to play, you know, because they'll play, Costa Bile Enchantress, or, they'll Gunner Lone Druid, heroes that you don't really see a lot or just in wacky positions. So they're always a fun one to face, but the matchup I think I'm most interested in seeing is I'm looking forward to the rematch versus Five Rat. We lost to them in the tiebreakers, and it was heartbreaking, and so I would love a chance to see us get our revenge.
And before the start of TI 11 qualifiers is the Arlington Major. Uh, Two teams have already qualified from NA. Quincy Crew and EG. Uh, the old guard has returned to restore its place at the top of the region ahead of the trip to Texas. And so, I'd just like to know, what are you expecting, or what are your expectations or confidence level for NA to do well, and and keep up with its momentum internationally this year, in Arlington. What is your expectation for NA in this upcoming major?
This tour has been interesting overall, really. LGD got fourth in China. They were undefeated last tour. Gaming Gladiators got fifth or sixth in Western EU. We have Navi back at a major LAN event. It's Quincy's looked impeccable. Since the roster changes. Since they got Fada, and I think I could very easily see them getting top six at a minimum. EG, it's a bit more like, yes, they got first place, but EG is one of those teams where, if they show up and they dominate, and they run over everybody. But as we saw in the last major, they got, you know, they got second in they got second in the North American DPC and got last place in the major. So they've looked very strong, especially in the second half of the tour. So I could very easily see them getting, top eight. But if I had to pick between the two teams, my money's on Quincy Crew. But I'm a little biased, so
So Quincy Crew top six at least, right?
yeah, 100%.
And where would you place EG? In the final standings of the competition.
See them go. It's funny. I could see them winning the whole thing. Just making me eat my words. I could also see them, getting, like knocked out in like the first round of, lower. I think they're gonna make it through group this time for sure. But with EG, they're a bit more, unpredictable right now. So it's difficult to kind of pin down a specific spot where I think this is where they're gonna end up.
Right, and hopefully North America does well, or more North America continues to do well internationally speaking. First we saw TSM finish runners up in Stockholm, and so hopefully we have another team at least reach the finals. Taking the directing the attention back to you, uh, as a manager, how much longer do you see yourself as a manager? Given that you've already been studying school and you're like you're kind of like you're kind of nearing towards graduation in college. How long do you view yourself as a manager within this scene?
I mean, one of the nice things about managing a Dota team, right? Especially, because I don't have to, I don't have a larger organization I need to worry about communicating with, is that all I need to do my job is Discord. I need access to Discord and my email, and I can do that from my phone. So, I can't be, teaching a class and just like, hold on, guys, like I gotta schedule this scrim, but I don't plan on quitting anytime soon. I want to see this through to the end.
You open up a particular subject within being a manager. Do you feel as if communicating with the players, purely remote, kind of like hinders your communication, outside of like Discord or online, when it comes to like studying or doing your other stuff?
No, I don't think so. It's almost it's almost like checking your text. Like every so often, I'll pop open Discord on my phone. I'll see like anything important. Anybody gotten back to me? No. All right, back to what I was doing. Even easier, right? If I'm writing a paper, I'm on my computer already. I can have Discord open in the background and just notification pops off. Is it important? I'll deal with it. If it's not, I'll go back to what I'm doing.
Right, right. I believe that about wraps up all of my questions. NPC, thank you so much for taking the time, accepting my request for an interview. It was a great conversation to have with you. Do you have like any final words to share at the end of this interview?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. You could follow our team on Twitter at the Cut GG. I technically have my own Twitter, but I use it so rarely I don't even remember what it is. But follow the cut. If you like us, maybe buy a shirt. But other than that, I have nothing else. Let's maybe hopefully I'll talk to you again after being at the international.
Hey, let's go. I love the confidence in that for real. Uh, a minor point. I actually found like your Twitter account. When it comes to researching this team, and you only had like three tweets, and one of them was like a screenshot of a conversation you had with SMD on Discord, and I was like, whoa, is this really the manager of the team? And so I was kind of like amazed because like I've never heard anything of like I've never heard or I've never seen any manager of the cut specifically, you know, publicize their stuff or post like tweets. And so it was kind of an eye opener for me, to see that.
Yeah, so yeah, I generally don't make a habit of posting DMs. It was for April Fool's Day. I wanted to do something silly, and since SMD didn't want me to do anything, I was just like feeling a bit cheeky, so I put it on my Twitter, so to go out to my 3 followers or whatever.
Hey, and I just found you. And I found you through that tweet, and that was amazing. But in any case, NPC, thank you so much for doing the interview. And with that, once again, NPC team manager of the cut. I've been Pedro Romero, and with that said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone.
Bye.